Love isn't an emotion that randomly springs into the heart. It is an art, and like any other art, it demands knowledge and effort. Perhaps never before have people spoken of love as much as in this era, where every song, movie, and social media post is brimming with declarations of affection. But the more words there are, the thinner love becomes. People know how to begin but not how to stay. They know how to search but not how to preserve. Amidst this clamor, The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm appears like a quiet pause, forcing people to stop and ask themselves whether they truly know how to love, or if they are merely yearning to be loved. The book doesn't teach techniques of conquest, nor does it narrate romantic stories. It is a profound psychological and philosophical inquiry into love, where love is viewed as a spiritual capacity rather than a spontaneous emotion. Fromm directly confronts the paradox of modern humans, lonely in a crowd, full of relationships yet empty in connection. He argues that love is the only answer to the separation of the self. But only those who are willing to learn it as an art with discipline, concentration, patience, and faith can truly grasp the essence of loving. Behind every page is a gentle yet profound warning. Humanity has forgotten that love is not possession, but creation. Love doesn't come to fill a void, but to expand the inner self. It doesn't make us full, but more transparent. And perhaps it is at this point that the book makes readers ask themselves, if love is an art, why do we still believe it only needs emotion? If love is a conscious act, why do we let ourselves fall in love as if by reflex? And if love is the only answer to human loneliness, do we have the courage to relearn how to love, starting not from others, but from how we live each day? The Art of Loving doesn't offer anyone a formula for being loved. It merely opens a mirror in which each person will see their true face in love, vulnerable, fearful, yet also infinitely capable of loving and being loved. The book speaks not with dogmatic tones, but with the serenity of a soul that has observed humanity to its depths, reminding us that love, if not learned, will forever remain a beautiful illusion. Humans always assume they understand love, believing that as long as the heart knows how to tremble, everything else will naturally unfold. But if so, why do most relationships end in disappointment, in silence, or in an emptiness difficult to name? I often wonder if love is an art, a capacity that needs to be learned, refined, and lived with, not just an emotion that comes and goes like the wind. In today's world, people crave love more than ever. They listen to love songs, watch films about romance, read novels brimming with emotion, and believe that in some way they are living with love. Yet, deep down, they remain lonely. Amidst countless praises, love has become a beautiful but alien concept, like a revered lamp that is never touched. The first misconception people make is that they care more about being loved than loving. They don't ask, how can I love more deeply? But only, how can I make others love me? From there, they begin to adorn themselves with qualities that might make them favored. Men strive to be successful, strong, and powerful. Women try to be alluring, graceful, and attractive. They chase social formulas for what is lovable, what is valuable. But they forget that the more they strive to be loved, the further they drift from the ability to truly love. Because love doesn't arise from pleasing others, but from the capacity to see the other person with an unconditional gaze. The second misconception is thinking that love only requires finding the right person. Love is transformed into a search for the perfect match, as if happiness depends on meeting the suitable other half. They believe that if they are lucky enough to find the right person, love will naturally blossom and endure. But if love were just about finding the right person, it would be no different from a transaction priced at market value. People choose each other as they would choose the best item they can afford. The girl picks a man with potential, the guy picks a woman with attractive looks, and both believe they are truly in love. In reality, it's just an exchange between two lonely individuals in a consumer society. Love becomes the combination of two people trying to convince each other that they've made the right choice. The third and most dangerous misconception is confusing initial infatuation with true love. When two strangers suddenly feel their hearts collide, the wall between them collapses. That feeling is so powerful and magical that they imagine it's proof of an eternal love. In that moment, loneliness vanishes and the world seems to exist only for them. But then, as the novelty fades, as differences begin to emerge, that magical feeling dissolves. What they called love was merely a moment of explosive loneliness temporarily assuaged. When the flame of infatuation dies, they realize they are as lonely as before. The only difference is that now, that loneliness has a witness. People continue to fall into this loop. Craving, infatuation, disappointment, new searches. They don't realize that the problem lies not with the object, but with their own capacity to love. Someone who doesn't know how to love cannot love anyone. Even if they meet the right person 100 times, they will fail. Conversely, someone who knows how to love will make anyone they love the right person. Modern society contributes to making these misconceptions more widespread than ever. We live in a culture of exchange where every value is quantified by its profitability or attractiveness. In such a world, love is also dragged into the orbit of commodities. Humans become social products, valuing themselves by their appearance, status, wealth, or ability to garner admiration. People love with market logic. Is this person worthy of me? Am I investing in a profitable relationship? When love is placed on the scales of benefit, it loses its sacred essence, the ability to transcend the ego to see each other's true selves. Love, when turned into a commodity, becomes more fragile than anything. People fear loss, fear losing out, fear giving without receiving. They don't realize that only by daring to give without calculation can love truly begin to exist. But to be able to give, a deeper capacity than emotion is needed, the capacity to love. And precisely here, the initial question echoes in the soul: is love an art? And if so, why don't people learn how to love? No one doubts that to become a musician, one must study for years. To become a doctor, one must train exhaustively. To become an artisan, one must dedicate a lifetime to the craft. But when it comes to love, something more important than everything else, people believe that merely a trembling heart is enough. That's why love in this era is like a forgotten instrument. Everyone wants to hear its sound, but no one is willing to learn how to play it. They clumsily pluck at strings with fleeting emotions, then blame fate when the music doesn't resonate as expected. Perhaps it's time for humanity to confront a truth. Loving is a journey of cultivation, not a chance occurrence. Love is not a miracle, but an art of living. And like all art, it requires understanding, effort, patience, and faith. Whoever wishes to learn it must be willing to leave behind illusions, stereotypes, and even the fear of being hurt. For only by daring to face one's naked self can one touch the deepest thing, the capacity to love. That is the starting point of every journey, not where one finds love, but where one begins to learn to love seriously, like learning an art that takes a lifetime to master. If we accept that love is an art, then like all other arts, it requires not only passion but also knowledge, discipline, and continuous practice. Yet in this era, very few people truly learn how to love. Everyone talks about love, but hardly anyone treats it as a skill to be honed. And precisely because of this, love becomes the only field where people fail the most but still confidently believe they are the best. If a person wants to be a carpenter, they must learn how to use a saw, measure, and understand wood. If a person wants to play an instrument, they must practice every key, every rhythm, every breath. Yet when it comes to love, people only trust instinct. They don't think that love also has structure, principles, rhythm, and subtlety like any other creative form. Love is reduced to an emotion, a dangerous misconception, for emotions can change, while art demands perseverance. To learn any art, one needs 3 elements: theory, practice, and absolute devotion. Love is the same. First, one needs to understand the theory. What is the essence of love? Why do humans need to love? What makes love endure, and what makes it break? One cannot love deeply without understanding that love is a survival need, not just an emotion. Truly loving people not only feel with their hearts but also perceive. After that comes practice. All theoretical understanding is meaningless if it is not lived, experienced, and practiced. Learning to love means learning to listen, learning to observe, learning to give without expecting return, learning to maintain one's freedom while remaining connected to others. Love is not just a burning sensation, but also quiet patience. It requires training, like an artist tirelessly working with their instrument, so that every touch, every breath has a soul. But these 2 elements are still not enough. The most important thing is devotion. No one can become an artist if they only love art superficially. They must see it as their purpose in life. Love is the same. Whoever does not see love as the most sacred thing will never love deeply. In today's society, Almost all energy is directed towards making a living, gaining status, achieving fame, success, money, and power. These things are considered worth learning, worth striving for. But love, the only thing that makes humans more human, is considered natural, needing no practice. People invest 10 years in a career, but don't spend a single day learning how to love. We live in a world where love is considered a luxury. Anything that doesn't generate profit is deemed useless. Therefore, learning to love is seen as a waste of time. People only focus on what can bring material benefit, while things that nourish the soul are pushed aside. They forget that all human achievements become meaningless without love as their foundation. Without love, intellect becomes a tool of domination. Without love, labor becomes a burden. Without love, even freedom is just loneliness. Love, therefore, cannot be learned through books or advice. It can only be learned through our own lives. In every relationship, in every disappointment, in every moment we realize we still don't know how to love. A person who knows how to love is someone who dares to confront their failures in loving, not blaming circumstances or others, but understanding that they themselves are still learning. But learning to love is the hardest thing because there is no measure of success. A person can become rich, famous, powerful, but that doesn't mean they know how to love. On the contrary, precisely those who are wealthy, powerful, and successful are often the loneliest. They may own the whole world but cannot own anyone's heart. They may be admired but not understood, and deep down, they still feel empty, as if life has forgotten an important puzzle piece. When we ask, why should we learn to love? The answer is simple: because love is the only way to escape loneliness. Love is not just an emotion directed towards others, but a power that connects humans to life itself. A person who knows how to love will feel that the universe has meaning, will feel they belong to something larger. A person who doesn't know how to love will always feel isolated, insecure, and lost. Modern society teaches us everything: how to control, how to possess, how to win. But it doesn't teach us how to love. Therefore, the more civilized humans become, the lonelier they get. They can speak thousands of words but understand no one. They can touch each other but not connect, and they call that love. Love, if it is an art, demands that the artist dare to risk. No one can be perfectly safe and love deeply at the same time. No one can keep their entire ego intact and still open their heart to others. Love requires courage. Courage to lose, to change, to be hurt, to be touched in the deepest parts of oneself. But it is there, in that vulnerability, that people find their true nature. Learning to love is not about being loved in return, but about understanding that love is the creative power that helps us exist. Without it, life is just a series of soulless, repetitive actions. With it, even pain becomes worth living. And that is what makes love the greatest art a human can learn: the art of living as a human being. Once we understand that love is an art, we no longer see it as a random miracle. Every art requires discipline, concentration, patience, and faith. Love is the same. It doesn't come just because two people meet and feel compatible. It only blossoms when both learn how to love, like two people learning the same piece of music who must listen to each other, harmonize, adjust, and together create the sound of life. Discipline is the first foundation. Without discipline, love is merely a fleeting flame. Modern humans fear discipline because they think it kills freedom. But true discipline is not coercion. It is the ability to master oneself. A person can only love enduringly when they are not controlled by momentary emotions. Someone who knows how to love can stay when anger rises, can listen when pride wants to leave. Just like an artist, if they don't practice every day, they will forget how to touch their instrument. In love, if we don't train every day, we will forget how to touch another's soul. Concentration is the second quality. In an age of noise and distractions, very few people are truly present when they love. People are accustomed to living with thousands of preoccupations: work, social media, personal worries. So when they are with someone else, their minds are still wandering elsewhere. But love demands complete presence. Without concentration, love is merely a habit, not a living experience. When we truly concentrate, we see the other person not as an object to possess, but as a vibrant world full of mystery, always needing to be explored. Only when we stop and listen does love become truly real. Patience is the greatest challenge. Everyone wants to love and be loved immediately, but everything of value takes time. A flower cannot bloom overnight. A person cannot become deeply familiar in just a few moments. Love needs time to grow, for two people to learn to understand, forgive, and trust each other. Patience is not passive waiting, but the confidence that everything is growing at its own rhythm. In that patience, love is like a gardener who cannot rush the flowering time, but can meticulously care for each root daily. And finally, faith. Without faith, there can be no love. Faith is not believing that the other person will never hurt us, but believing that love is worth the risk, even if it might be painful. A truly loving person does not ask if the other is worthy, but asks if they themselves have the courage to love. Because love is an act of faith in humanity, faith in life, faith that behind all limitations and wounds, something sacred is still at work. These elements discipline, concentration, patience, and faith are not rigid rules. They are ways for humans to train their souls to be able to love without losing themselves, because love, if not nourished from within, will quickly dissolve. It's like a fire that burns everything in an instant and then leaves only ashes. But when nurtured with awareness, it becomes a gentle, enduring light that can warm a lifetime. Therefore, learning to love is not just about loving others, but primarily about learning how to live. Whoever knows how to love knows how to live, because loving and living are actually one. Both are processes of expanding oneself to embrace the world. When we know how to love, we are no longer separate from life. Everything becomes connected. A fleeting breeze, a morning, a stranger's face all make us feel alive. Love is the ability to feel life in every breath, in every fragile connection between ourselves and the world. Without love, everything becomes meaningless. People can live, work, succeed, but deep in their hearts, they feel empty. This emptiness doesn't come from lacking someone by their side, but from lacking connection with themselves. Someone who doesn't know how to love also cannot love themselves, because they have never learned to look at themselves with compassion. And when they cannot love themselves, they can only love others out of fear. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. Such love is merely dependence, not freedom. Learning to love is learning to free oneself from the bonds of fear. It is daring to stand before others in one's nakedness, without defense, without pretending to be strong. It is daring to let others see one's true self-vulnerabilities, imperfections, and still not run away. That is the courage of someone who knows that love doesn't guarantee happiness, but still chooses to love. Because not loving is even more terrifying than love. Love, after all, is the art of existence. It teaches us how to be present in every moment, how to see the sacred in the ordinary, how to live not just with our minds, but with our entire being. Whoever knows how to love no longer seeks perfection, but learns to love the imperfect. Because love doesn't make the world less flawed, it makes us accept those very flaws. And that is why love is the greatest art. With no audience, no stage, just you and the other two people together learning how to be human. Every glance, every gesture, every act of forgiveness is a brushstroke on the invisible canvas of life. When we know how to love, we become artists of ourselves, creating beauty not with our hands, but with our hearts. When I think of love this way, I see it no longer as a vague mystery, but as a path. That path doesn't promise glory, doesn't bring safety, but leads us closer to our true nature. There, we don't just love one person, but we love existence itself, love the fact that we are still alive, love the world that continues, love our own fragility. Because only when we learn to love as an art do, we understand that all we ever searched for was ultimately just to return to the capacity for love that already resides within us. Humans are the only creatures who know they exist, but because of this, they must also face an unfillable loneliness. Since separating from nature, humans have become self-aware, knowing themselves as distinct individuals. They realize they can think, choose, resist, but precisely because of this, they feel thrown out of the natural world, cut off from the safe embrace of Mother Earth. In the moment of realizing, I am I, humans also begin to tremble before the deep chasm of separation between themselves and others, between consciousness and instinct, between the desire for union and the fear of being swallowed. From then on, love becomes the only answer to human separation. It is not just an emotion, but an action to transcend oneself, to unite without losing oneself. But before being able to love, humans have gone through countless clumsy attempts to escape loneliness misguided, temporary, sometimes bloody forms of union. One of the oldest forms of union is symbiotic fusion at a biological level, the bond between a pregnant mother and the child in her womb. Two yet one, separate yet connected. That is the primal model for all later attachments. Humans always long to rediscover the feeling of absolute envelopment, as when in the mother's womb, but as they grow up, that need remains, merely transforming its shape. It becomes the need to find another, mother, someone to dissolve into, to no longer be lonely, no longer responsible for oneself. And thus two forms of dependence emerge, passive and active. The passive form is the type of person who escapes loneliness by submitting, surrendering all their will to another. That person can be a lover, a leader, a religion, or an idea. The submissive person no longer has to decide, no longer has to bear risks. They feel protected, guided, like a child returning to its mother's embrace. But the price of that safety is freedom. They live but no longer live as independent individuals. This is a form of union based on self-abandonment, which Fromm calls the masochistic form, voluntarily enslaving oneself to another person or will. Conversely, the active form is the one who wants to devour others to fill their own emptiness. This person finds existence by dominating, controlling, possessing. They make others an extension of themselves, like a small god trying to prove their power. But just like the dependent person, the dominator is not truly free. For when they need others to affirm their strength, they are still bound. Both the submissive and the possessor are imprisoned in the same jail. The jail of union without freedom, of two becoming one but no longer being two. Looking deep into history, we see countless examples of this type of union. It lies in fervent religious rituals where believers dissolve in collective ecstasy. It lies in relationships that seem passionate but are actually mutual possession. It lies in politics, where rulers and submissive crowds mutually feed on grand illusions. That is the kind of union called psychic symbiosis, where the human soul ceases to stand upright, leaning on others to avoid collapsing. But not all desires for union are misguided. Beneath all needs for fusion lies humanity's most sacred instinct. Humans want to break free from isolation, to touch others without losing themselves. They want to merge with the world while retaining their identity. And there is only one way to do that: to love not as possession, nor as dependence, but to love as an act of freedom, where two people meet and remain themselves. In mature love, no one devours anyone. Each person is their own world, with their own will, beliefs, and values. But in the moment of love, they open the door of themselves for the other to enter, not out of fear or need, but out of voluntary choice. This is what differentiates love from all other forms of union. It preserves the integrity of each individual while creating a unity deeper than any other bond. Love in this sense is not an emotion that comes and goes, but an active behavior, a cultivated capacity. Only those who have learned to exist in loneliness, accepted themselves, and are brave enough to face their own emptiness can truly love. An immature person seeks love to escape. A mature person seeks love to offer. Such love is a meeting between two souls who have learned to live independently. They come together not to fill a void, but to share their abundance. When they give, they lose nothing, for giving is a way to affirm their own vitality. They don't love to be loved in return, but because loving is the natural expression of a mature soul. Mature love is union that preserves freedom. It is the deepest voice of the human self, where we are both ourselves and no longer alone. In that world, the lover and the beloved are not opposed, but coexist like two fires warming each other, not consuming each other. When we understand this, we will realize that love cannot arise from fear, from lack, or from the desire to possess. It can only originate from a free soul. And precisely because of this, love is not surrender but the bravest act a human can perform. The courage to step out of the shell of loneliness. The courage to believe that in this divided world, there can still be a place for two souls to meet without dissolving. That is the profound essence of love, the only answer to the existential problem of humanity: how to live among many people and still be oneself. How to retain freedom and still not be lonely. Love, if it reaches that level, not only saves a relationship, but also redeems humanity from the chilling cold spreading in every soul. Love is not an emotion that flares up and then fades. It is a conscious act, a capacity for giving from a mature soul. People often think that to love is to be loved, to have someone fill the void within them. But the truth is entirely opposite. Love is giving, and only when we know how to give do we truly receive. When we love in order to be reciprocated, that love dies from the very first moment because it does not originate from freedom, but from the desire to possess. The essence of love is to give, but not to give to lose, but to give as a way to live. A truly loving person gives not out of duty or morality, but because it is an expression of their inner vitality, like a lamp radiating light because its nature is light. When people love, they naturally radiate life without calculation. Giving is an act of self-affirmation. When we love, we become creators of joy, security, and meaning for others. And in that very act, we realize we are living fully. To be able to give like that, love needs to be based on 4 fundamental elements: care, responsibility, respect, and understanding. Care is the first and clearest expression of love. No one can claim to love and yet be indifferent to the life and happiness of the other. When we love a flower, we tend to it, water it, give it light, protect it from wind and storm. When we love a person, we care about their development, not just in the moment, but throughout their journey of life. True love is always connected to action, not words. Responsibility is not a heavy duty, but a willingness to respond to the needs of the other, even if they don't voice them. A person with mature love will naturally sense when their beloved needs comfort, needs to be heard, needs silence, or needs a hand to hold. Responsibility in love does not come from an external command, but from within. It is a voluntary act of the heart. Respect is allowing the other person to be themselves. Many people imagine that to love is to possess, that the more connected one is, the more right one has to control. But that only kills love. Respect means seeing the other person exactly as they are, without trying to mold them to one's own desires. When we truly respect someone, we don't just love the image of them in our eyes, but we also love the mysterious, incomprehensible part of them. That small distance, where we cannot reach, is the space that allows love to breathe. Understanding is the soul of love. We can only love someone when we truly understand them, and understand them not through what they say, but through what they remain silent about. Understanding is seeing the other person in their totality, both their strengths and their weaknesses, both their light and their shadow. But true understanding cannot exist if we do not transcend our ego. Because when we only see the other person through our own desires, we never truly see them. Only when we look with eyes of compassion does love become deep empathy rather than judgment. When these 4 elements merge, care, responsibility, respect, understanding, love becomes a complete action, a creative act that helps humans transcend existential loneliness. And it is in this capacity to give that humans find freedom. This kind of love is most clearly demonstrated in the first relationship of life, between mother and child. That is where love first appears, pure and complete. The mother does not love the child because it is beautiful, obedient, or useful. She loves it simply because it exists. That is unconditional love, the kind of love that demands no return, depends not on the value or behavior of the object. But that love is only truly great when the mother knows how to love and still let go. If a mother only loves when the child is dependent on her, that is not love but possession. True motherly love is wanting her child to grow up, to leave, to be free. She knows that love does not mean holding on, but creating the conditions for the child to become itself. When the child can go far yet carry within its heart a sense of security and trust, that is proof that the mother's love has completed its purpose. For the father, love takes on a different nuance. A father's love is conditional love, linked to rules, justice, and direction. The father teaches the child limits, responsibility, and how to distinguish right from wrong. If a mother's love is a refuge, a father's love is a door opening to the world. In a father's love, there is demand, but it is a demand to help the child become strong and resilient. A mature person needs both forms of love in their soul, the unconditional nature of the mother and the fairness of the father. When one is lacking, a person will live out of balance, either unable to break free from dependent affection or living dryly, only knowing reason and forgetting tenderness. Other forms of love, brotherly love, erotic love, self-love, and love of God, all stem from the harmony of these 2 forces. In brotherly love, people learn to love others as themselves, not for personal gain. In erotic love, people yearn for complete union with a single individual. But erotic love is only truly lasting when supported by care, respect, understanding, and responsibility. In self-love, people learn to love themselves without being egoistic, because only by loving oneself can one healthily love others. And in the love of God, people strive for union with the infinite, transcending all boundaries of the ego. All these forms are different currents of the same source: love as a life force, as a creative and free act. When one understands that, one no longer seeks love outside but begins to nourish it from within, like someone lighting a lamp in the night, not to illuminate for others, but to keep the light for oneself. Love, in its many forms, is a bridge that helps humans escape separation, reconnecting the broken relationship between ourselves and the world. Yet, in today's era, love is gradually disappearing as a true living value, replaced by simulated forms. Its shadow remains, but its soul has departed. Humans talk about love more than ever, write about it, sing about it. But the more words there are, the further its meaning drifts. This is not because people no longer crave love, but because they have lost the necessary inner conditions to truly love. Modern society nurtures humans as part of a consumer machine. From birth, each individual is taught that happiness lies in possession of material things, fame, knowledge, and even other people. Therefore, love is also drawn into this vortex, becoming a type of exchange rather than communion. People love as if they are buying and selling, weighing whether the other person is valuable, whether they can meet their needs, whether they can make them happy. If so, they are willing to invest; if not, they withdraw. In the market of emotions, people also become commodities. Each person markets themselves through appearance, attractiveness, and memorized social skills, but inside they are empty. People say, "I love you," but actually mean, "I want to possess you." They say, "I need you," but the true meaning is, "I need someone to fill my loneliness." These emotions are intense but fleeting. When the other person no longer brings excitement, love vanishes like smoke. Because in a society where everything is replaceable, love is no longer sacred. It becomes a temporary product that can be consumed and discarded when it expires. Behind this phenomenon is a deeper malaise: human alienation. People have lost the living connection between themselves and their work with nature, with others. They work not to create, but to exist. They live in crowded cities yet are utterly lonely. They connect with thousands of people through screens, but no longer know how to genuinely touch anyone. In such a world, love becomes a luxury, because love demands time, concentration, presence, things that this hurried life has stripped away. Modern humans fear love because love means risk. Love means letting another person touch their most vulnerable spot, opening wide the door that they always try to keep locked. But this society worships safety and control. Everything has a plan, a contract, conditions, so people fear the uncertainty of love. They want a predictable kind of affection, with a warranty, with profit, with stable emotions. They forget that to love is to step into a realm that cannot be measured, where we might lose. But it is only there that we truly live. Alienation is also reflected in how people understand themselves. They no longer feel they are someone, but merely something, a brand, a competence, an achievement. They measure their self-worth by market standards and seek a lover as one seeks a good contract. But love cannot arise between two commodities. It can only exist between two real human beings who know how to see and accept each other with non-judgmental eyes. In such a society, false forms of love flourish. There are relationships that are merely symbiotic arrangements between two people who fear loneliness. There are marriages that are just social alliances. There are passionate affairs simply to escape emptiness. People think they are in love, but in reality, they are transacting. Exchanging safety for passion, exchanging bodies for a feeling of being cared for, exchanging time for the existence of a name in someone's life. The more the material world develops, the more humans lose the ability to connect spiritually. Communication tools are created to shorten distances, but they only widen the gap between two souls. People know everything but understand no one, talk more but listen less, meet more but touch less. And in that commotion, true love is forgotten, like a tiny lute lost in a noisy marketplace. Yet, no matter how distorted society becomes, love remains the only power that can save humanity from alienation. It is the creative force that allows humans to retain their humanity. Someone who knows how to love is never completely despairing, because they always see a part of themselves in others. That love does not depend on circumstances, is not controlled by the market, is not fated by time. It is an act of living every day, every moment, every breath. When a person truly knows how to love, they no longer ask, "What will I get?" but only, "How much can I give?" In a world dominated by selfishness and fear, a person who knows how to love becomes a silent rebel. They dare to believe in humanity, dare to open their heart, dare to be hurt, dare to be patient. It is thanks to them that life still has meaning. Therefore, the solution to humanity's crisis lies not in inventions or new social models, but in the resurgence of true love. Love as an art, as a creative act, as a path for humans to return to themselves. As long as people still know how to love without calculation, still know how to give without fear of loss, still know how to see others as souls and not as commodities, hope will remain. Because in the deepest loneliness, when everything else collapses, there is only one thing that allows humans to still get up and continue. That is love. Not the love of promises, but love as the power of existence, as the affirmation that we live because we can still love. Learning to love, like learning any other art, has no shortcuts, no magic. To love, one must first learn to live, learn to see, learn to breathe, learn to listen to oneself. Love is not something that falls upon us as a grace, but an art that needs to be practiced with discipline, concentration, patience, and supreme concern. Discipline is the first and most difficult thing. Modern people fear discipline as they fear chains, because they are accustomed to being driven by desires and conveniences. But in any art, without discipline, all inspiration flickers out like a spark in the wind. An artist cannot create if they only paint when they feel inspired. Inspiration only comes to the steadfast. Similarly, a person learning to love cannot only love when it is convenient or comfortable. They must train like a performer, every day, every motion, every way of listening. The discipline of love is not coercion, but a different kind of freedom from sloppiness and superficiality. Yet discipline is only the beginning, for if there is only discipline without concentration, one will never reach the depths of loving. In today's world, people are so scattered that they rarely can be still with themselves. We do many things at once: eating, listening to music, browsing the internet, talking, then looking at the clock. The mind is never fully present anywhere. And precisely because of this, when facing the person we love, we are not truly present either. Loving without concentration is loving in a fog. We don't see the other person, but only a reflection of ourselves. Concentration is the art of presence, the ability to sit quietly alone, listen to one's breath, look directly at emotions without rushing to escape. Someone who cannot be alone also cannot love, because they only seek in others a way to escape their own emptiness. From discipline and concentration, people learn the third lesson: patience. Anyone who has ever learned a skill knows that if one only expects immediate results, one will never go far. In an age of speed, patience is the most undervalued quality. The faster machines become, the more impatient people get. We call time gold, but we spend it on things that leave no trace. Everyone wants to love quickly, live hurriedly. But true love only blossoms slowly, like a seed needing time to take root. Love requires the perseverance of two souls growing together. Those who don't know how to wait will only harvest fleeting emotions. And then all these things will yield nothing if they lack supreme concern. No one can learn an art if they don't consider it the most important thing in life. A person learning an instrument cannot improve if they only play when they feel like it. The same applies to a person learning to love. If love is not something we truly cherish, it will forever remain a pastime. A person learning to love is like someone searching for themselves. They don't seek short-term pleasure, but a transformation of the soul. Love only opens up to those who place it at the center of life, because learning to love is not learning a technique, but learning how to exist. Whoever sees love as a small part of a comfortable life will only taste the surface, but whoever sees love as a path of cultivation will be completely transformed. There is one thing often overlooked. No one can learn an art directly. Before a carpenter can build a table, they must learn to sharpen wood to listen to each grain. Before an artist can paint, they must learn to see. Before an archer can hit the target, they must learn to breathe. Learning to love is the same. Its path is indirect. We must cultivate seemingly unrelated capacities: the ability to concentrate, patience, tranquility, the capacity for observation and understanding. Whoever rushes into love lacking these things will only build castles on sand. Love is not the result of craving, but the fruit of maturity. People say that merely loving is enough, but to love without understanding, to love without discipline, to love without serenity, such love is merely the intoxication of instinct. It can be beautiful, it can be intense, but it is not lasting. Such love does not nourish the soul, it only depletes it. But love as an art is conscious love, responsible love, deep love. When a person truly begins to learn to love, they will find themselves changing every day. They no longer seek others to fill a void, but to share. They no longer love to be loved in return, but because loving is an act of living, a natural breath. They no longer fear loneliness, because in stillness they have met themselves. And then, from the smallest things, how we see, how we hear, how we touch others, love begins to be practiced, just like an artist. After years of practice, they can finally draw a simple line that contains all their love. When it has become an art, a small gesture, a glance, a moment of silence can encompass a lifetime. That is when humans understand that love is not possession, not the search for perfection, but a continuous, humble process of unceasing cultivation. And only then does love become a creative act, no longer a reaction of instinct. Learning to love cannot stop at superficial training. It demands a silent revolution within the soul. After having learned discipline, concentration, patience, and placing love as the supreme concern, people must face their deepest enemy, vanity. Vanity prevents us from seeing the world as it is. We don't see others, but only a reflection of ourselves in them. When vanity controls, we don't love, we are merely seeking someone to validate our worth. A compliment makes us radiant, a criticism makes us crumble. Such a person cannot truly love because love demands objectivity, the ability to see the other person with free eyes, untainted by ego. But objectivity does not come naturally. It is cultivated through reason and humility. Humility is the first step to escaping illusion. A humble person does not think they are the center of the universe, nor do they consider themselves meaningless. They see themselves within the totality of life as a small part of a larger flow. When we are humble, we can listen to others, truly understand, and love without possessing. Conversely, arrogant people love no one. They only love their own image reflected in the eyes of others. Reason is the arm of objectivity. It is not opposed to emotion, but helps us orient emotions, separating what is real from illusion in love. Reason does not kill passion, but protects it from distortion. A rational person knows that love is not just passion but understanding, the ability to see both the bright and dark sides of the other and still want to stay. Humility, objectivity, and reason, these three qualities are the foundation of the art of loving. Without them, love turns into blindness. With them, love becomes a guiding light. Whoever cultivates these three qualities has gone halfway towards true love. But beyond these three qualities lies something deeper, rational faith. Without faith, we cannot love because love is an act of trust. The faith Fromm speaks of is not blind religious belief, nor vague optimism. It is rational faith, a faith born from lived experience and inner understanding. It is believing that even though people are weak and make mistakes, they still have the capacity for goodness. Believing that even though the world is chaotic, in every soul there is a seed of light. Believing that even though we may have been betrayed and hurt, we can still open our hearts again. No one can love if they don't dare to believe like that. Rational faith is tested faith. It is built on what we know to be true, not through dogma, but through experience. A person with rational faith does not believe because they are told to believe. They believe because they have lived, have felt, have witnessed that life can blossom when we commit ourselves to it with all our hearts. In science, we also need faith. Scientists never know for sure if what they are looking for is true, but they still believe in reason and humanity's capacity for discovery. Rational faith is trust in humanity and the capacity of reason to approach truth. Similarly, in love, we believe that if we love with a clear heart, with a mature soul, that love will lead us to the truth, however difficult the path. Rational faith is an inner capacity that encompasses both thought and emotion. It is not just in the head or in the heart, but a combination of both. A person with rational faith is not blind. They doubt when necessary, but that doubt does not kill faith, it makes faith purer. They are not afraid of failure because they believe that value lies in the act of loving, not in the outcome. Such a person can love without demanding. They know that love is not always reciprocated, but that does not make them bitter. Because for them, love is a free act, a way of affirming life. Love and faith are two sides of the same coin. Without faith, love becomes a game of fear. Without love, faith turns into an empty theory. Someone who knows how to love is someone who dares to believe, and someone who dares to believe has begun to know how to love. The practice of love, therefore, is not just about training communication skills or learning how to care. It is a process of cultivating faith. Faith that humans are worthy of love, that within us and within others there is goodness, even if obscured by layers of fear and selfishness. Faith that loving is not a useless gamble, but the only journey that makes life meaningful. When people lose that faith, they become empty. They may be successful, wealthy, admired. But deep down, they know they are no longer truly living. Because living without knowing how to love is the slowest death. Only with rational faith can people love in this world, a world of doubt, haste, and pretense. And only by knowing how to love can people regain faith. Faith not placed in deities or theories, but in their own capacity to live, create, and understand. The practice of love is a journey of courage and faith, two qualities rarely mentioned, but ultimately the foundation of all true love. For to love, people must dare to gamble on the most uncertain thing, the heart of another, and their own fragility. Courage is not just heroic action in the face of danger, but the ability to live truthfully in a fearful world. Someone who dares to love is someone who dares to open their heart, dares to admit that they can be hurt. When we love, we grant others the power to hurt us, but at the same time, we grant ourselves the opportunity to live fully. Fear of suffering is natural, but fearing it to the point of not daring to love is dying before death. Only those who dare to embrace that fear, to go through it, understand that courage and love are two different ways of saying the same quality of life. To love and be loved requires faith. But faith here is not blind belief, but rational faith, a belief grounded in experience and understanding. A person with rational faith doesn't need proof to love, but neither do they reject reason. They believe in humanity not because they are told to believe, but because they have seen in themselves the capacity to overcome fear, weakness, and selfishness. They believe that if they can change, others can too. They believe that love, however fragile, is the truest thing humanity possesses. In a world dominated by power and calculation, faith and power are always mutually exclusive. Where people use power to coerce, faith dies. And when faith dies, love cannot exist either. Power can make others submit, but it cannot make them love. Love only arises when people voluntarily open their hearts, not out of fear or desire, but because they see an unconditional value in the other. True faith always goes hand in hand with courage. Without courage, faith is just an empty concept. Courage is the first step out of the comfort zone, where reason can no longer control the outcome, but the heart still moves forward. Those who dare to love know they might be disappointed, but they still believe. They know the other person might betray them, but they still choose to entrust their faith not out of naivety, but because they understand that love is not a guarantee, but a daily offering. People must practice this faith as an act of living, because no one can maintain faith forever. It is worn away by disappointment, betrayal, hurt, and the world's skepticism. But precisely when we realize we are losing faith, that is an opportunity to learn to love more deeply. Losing faith is not as terrifying as not realizing one has lost it. Every time we close our hearts, when we look at others with suspicion, when we choose safety over sincerity, we are betraying our own faith. And only by honestly seeing that can we restore our capacity to love. There is a deep-seated fear in modern humans, not the fear of not being loved, but the fear of having to love. Because loving means giving up control, accepting that our happiness can be decided by another. Modern society teaches people how to be strong, how to be self-sufficient, but not how to be vulnerable. Thus, they become lonely in their shell of pride. They choose controlled solitude over loving with risk. But if people continue to fear love, they will lose the very capacity that distinguishes them from machines. The capacity to feel, connect, and create. Rational faith is not just believing in oneself, but also believing in the potential of others. Someone who knows how to love always sees in the other what they can become, not just what they are. They don't try to fix others, but help them open up. This is the difference between education and manipulation. Education awakens potential, while manipulation forces conformity. When we love with faith, we become nurturers, not controllers. And extended further, this faith becomes faith in humanity, believing that even though society is full of flaws, people still have the capacity to build a more just and compassionate order. Believing that even though war, greed, and selfishness still exist, the power of love quietly resists them every day. The history of humanity, if viewed through the eyes of love, is not just a story of sin, but a story of hope. Tiny individuals who dare to believe in goodness even when the world denies it. Love, faith, and courage are the three beats of the same heart. When we love, we believe. When we believe, we have courage. And when we have courage, we love more deeply. All civilizations may crumble, all doctrines may change. But as long as people still know how to love, life will still have meaning. Love is not a reward, but a journey. It does not end when we are loved back, but only begins there. Every day of loving is a day of practice. Practicing how to believe, how to be patient, how to see the world with gentler eyes. And even if this world denies love, those who still hold it in their hearts are quietly saving humanity. Because ultimately, only love as an art of living is powerful enough to heal the wounds of this world, where people learn to see each other, believe in each other, and dare to open their hearts even knowing they might be hurt. Love is not a destination, but the only path for humans to truly live as human beings. If there is one single thing this book wants to leave us with, it is that love is not a reward for the lucky ones, but the lifelong work of souls who dare to mature. Love is not an emotion that falls from the sky, nor a miracle from the outside. It is a conscious act, a choice repeated every day. When Erich Fromm says that love is an art, he is not talking about techniques to acquire someone, but about the capacity to be human in a world that has forgotten how to be human. Love, in its deepest sense, is not a matter between two people, but how we exist among humanity. A person who knows how to love cannot merely love their family and hate others. They cannot love one person and be indifferent to the world, because love is not possession but opening up. Love is daring to see oneself in all other living beings, daring to touch human fragility without turning away. We often say we want to be loved, but we rarely ask ourselves if we are capable enough to love. We demand to be understood. But have we ever truly listened to anyone? We long for someone who won't leave us, but have we ever patiently stayed with ourselves in loneliness? The answers to these questions determine the quality of every relationship and, even more deeply, the quality of our own lives. The greatest lesson from this book is that to love, we must learn to live with discipline, concentration, patience, humility, and faith. Not faith in religion, but faith in humanity that despite our weaknesses, we can still aspire to goodness. Despite being hurt, we can still open our hearts. That is rational faith, a courageous kind of belief, not blind, but not despairing. It doesn't promise that we will be reciprocated, but guarantees that we will live truthfully. For only those who dare to love know what it means to exist. Fromm doesn't teach us how to be loved, but how to become a person who can love. When a person truly knows how to love, they become a source of light. And love is no longer a relationship, but a state of the soul. Such a person can be lonely without despair, can lose without breaking, because they understand that loving is an act of giving without calculation. They know that when we give, our inner world does not diminish, it expands. Perhaps the most paradoxical thing this book posits is that love only comes to those who no longer need asterisk to be loved. When we stop wishing for someone to fill us. When we are so full that we can share without fear of depletion. When we love for the sake of loving and not out of fear of loneliness. It is at that moment that love truly begins. And now the remaining question for each person is, if love is an art, have we truly begun to learn it? If love is a conscious act, are we loving, or merely seeking someone to escape our own emptiness? And if today all conveniences, all relationships, all noise were to vanish, would we have the courage to still love this world simply because it exists and because we can still feel it? Try living one day with the concentration of someone learning to love. Look deeply at the face of the person opposite you. Listen slowly to your own breath. Do a small task with all your sincerity. Perhaps you will be surprised to realize that love has never left the world. It's just that we've been moving too fast to see it. Because ultimately, there is no path asterisk to asterisk love. Love is asterisk the path. And whoever dares to step onto that path, though trembling, though full of confusion, has begun to become an artist in their own life.